Okay, good. Right, so the recording has started. Feel free to have cameras on or off. It's entirely up to you. If you're eating your lunch, you might want to turn them off. There will be some options for kind of interacting if you want to, but also feel free to sit and eat your lunch and just listen to us if you want to. So welcome to those of you that are here live, and also welcome to anybody that's watching the recording later. I will just move on to what we're going to cover over the next hour, so hopefully you're in the right place, and if you're not, then I'll let you duck out now. But what we plan to cover in the next hour is introducing who we are at Optimo. We'll go through what the growing pains are that we know a lot of agencies experience, talk a little bit about what good looks like, and then talk through some of the ingredients for effective capacity management for a growing agency. And there will be some time for questions at the end, but do feel free to kind of say hello and put questions in the chat at any time now if you're watching live, or obviously you can get in touch with us if you're watching the recording later. We do have a special offer for those of you that are here at the end as well, so it's not just a tactic to keep you to the end, but yeah, you can grab that on the recording later as well. So if you're not already connected with Vicky and I on LinkedIn, then do feel free to use these QR codes to find us. We thought we'd give you a little bit of an introduction to who we are and why we are worth listening to when it comes to operational challenges in agencies. So my background is essentially project management by trade. I worked in lots of different sectors in consultancy, operations, transformation and behaviour change. And my background was predominantly health and social care consultancy and transformation for nearly 10 years. But I sort of made a conscious choice when I set up what is now Optimo to bring the skills and expertise that I have into the world of sustainability. So we kind of weave sustainability and ethics into everything that we do, but we also work with organisations that are sort of values aligned, I suppose, in that respect. So whether that's through the product or service that they offer, or whether that's through the way that they run their businesses. Vicky, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Yes, thank you. So hi everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm Vicky, the other part of the duo. So my background's in business analysis and systems analysis. So I've worked for over 15 years across many sectors, including charity, the NHS, and digital marketing, to name a few. But I've always been really passionate and interested in technology, and also around how sustainability can be intertwined with technology across different landscapes and different businesses and organizations. So wherever we can find that nice kind of conduit between the two, I'm definitely interested in helping those people that are doing that. I'm also not an expert when it comes to sustainability, but I've worked in many different organisations, as Danielle said, where sustainability is at the core of what they do and ethics. And I truly believe that with the work that I bring and I do for organisations, I can help weaving all the good stuff around people and planet into making those businesses the best that they are.
Good. I forgot how cheesy this picture is of us. Yeah, our photographer was great at making us laugh and then capturing goofy faces.
It had terrible jokes.
Yeah. So as we've both touched on a little bit, so we work with businesses and not-for-profits who are working in environmental and social change spaces, and we basically help them to be more efficient and more effective in what they do. And our framework, which we'll come on to in a second, is by looking at organisations' operations holistically. So we look at people, processes, technology and information, and how those four elements sort of come together in harmony to create a more effective and efficient operation. Do you want to do this one, Vicky? I've realised I stole your last one. Sorry.
You did. You stole my slides already. This is a great start. So this is our framework that we use, as Daniel mentioned, when we look at that holistic point of view at a business. So we cover the people, the processes, the tech, and the information. The reason why we picked these 4 pillars is because they are the kind of the golden thread between all the organisation, what happens in an organisation. So everything from designing effective roles and responsibilities and making sure that the team are engaged and motivated, then using that energy and motivation in processes. So whether that's mapping them out, finding new ways to improve what they've already got and increase that efficiency, and then building on top of that, there is the technology that will be supporting those processes. So we will evaluate technology, we'll help them go to market and find the right one, and really help streamline everything that's coming through the business from an end-to-end perspective. And most importantly, the information or data. We need to measure how we're doing, and we need to see how well we're doing in all different areas of an organisation. So we bake in information, and it's normally something that's left to the end in a lot of projects, but it's something that we make sure is a key pillar in how we approach all the work. And when we talk about, what we do in operations, like I say, that holistic point of view is really, really key to make sure that we don't miss any of those key areas for being the most efficient and effective in how we run.
Okay, so this is something that we've seen not only, organisations, agencies that we've been speaking to, and in more detail within the clients that we've been working with. So what we tend to see is that you have defined your purpose and clients are loving your services and you're potentially even growing the team. But does that necessarily mean that your internal operations are keeping up? Not always is probably the quick answer to that. So some of the signs that you're likely to see is your team are kind of working overtime or feeling overwhelmed or stressed. Client demands are probably met more reactively or feel like a bit of a scrabble. And you don't have the right data to track profitability. And you're probably using spreadsheets or disjointed tools, usually lots of different tools, to manage workload.
So one of the things that happens in any kind of growth spurt is that we have growing pains everywhere, and these can show up in multiple ways in a business, and especially we're seeing in agency life, and some of them might be a bit obvious to you, some of them you might be feeling right now, and you might start nodding. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of really go through some of our observations and our experiences in agencies when it comes to those growing pains that you might be seeing and feeling. So let's take each one just in a kind of a snapshot about what it looks like. So over servicing clients, it's kind of being kind is a bit of a killer on time and profitability and budgets a lot of the time. Many of us, especially when we're delivering a service and a product, is we want to do a good job. So, perfection and spending an extra 10 hours on something can, make the difference of doing that thing really, really well. But it also means that you might blow your budget. So, that time is still precious, and that time still has a value to it, whether it's, monetary or love. So over servicing clients is something that we see quite often. We'll come a little bit further to this further on, but changing scope, and to quote the Project Management Institute, quotes that over 50% of projects experience scope creep, which seems bonkers, but if you think back in your time, whenever you've tried to nail some scope down on a client brief or in a project that you're doing internally, there's always a little bit of let's just take this in and let's put this, let's just do a little bit more, and that can kind of tie in with the first point as well, is trying to be kind and doing a little bit extra along the way. But scope creep is really important when it comes to making sure you nail what it is you're trying to deliver to your end clients.
I think over 50%. Like over is probably the key word there as well, because I definitely reckon it's way higher than 50%.
Yeah, I totally agree. From personal experience, it feels higher, but it's what the Project Management Institute have kind of given the figure of. But like I think over is definitely more life experience founded
Yeah.
and felt. Let's talk about bottlenecks. It's something that most people feel, especially leaders, feel like they are the bottlenecks. They're even self-claiming bottlenecks to a lot of leaders that I actually speak to about this, and they're like, "Yeah, that's me." As soon as we talk about bottlenecks, they're like, "Yeah, that's who I am. I am the person that things sit in my inbox, and wait for me to get to it at some point when I get a second." I'm just going to close my curtain because unfortunately the beautiful sunshine is blinding me for a moment, but I can't turn it out, shut it out too much. But yeah, bottlenecks is one of those killers. You've got some kind of staging review stage in place, and that stage actually ends up being the bottleneck for making decisions and pushing things through and keeping the momentum of delivery overall end to end can really get in the way. And it's seen and felt across many different leaders in the agency world. The next one is looking about unclear or long sign-off processes, that arduous, gateways to yeses and nos. And it's, there's always that kind of saying of there's too many cooks can spoil the broth, and there's too many people trying to get involved to sign something off. Or even worse, you get a stakeholder who you didn't even know about who comes into play and then throws a lot of feedback into the mix that you just didn't see, and they actually are probably the ultimate sign-off person as well. So there's making sure we've got everything covered in terms of key players. Easily said, not so easily done at times, and it can be seen and felt in frustration. And if you've ever felt it yourself, you'll know what that frustration feeling feels like. It sometimes shows up on a Friday afternoon at 4:30 when somebody wants something actually done by the Monday morning as well, which is just the worst thing to see at the end of your busy week. Communication and the communications overheads that come into play. So really, look, the meeting's about meetings, saying, having a meeting about a meeting before you even have got in front of the client to deliver the brief. You've already had, you've got to think about the time that it takes to before you even get to that meeting and that key status call or that pitch meeting that you're having, and really understanding that before you even get to that pitch, there's probably time and working, needed before you get to that. So it could be, an hour's prep before, something to do after, and then, the next stage in that process that you're taking it along can finally happen. And the other kind of thing that comes within communications is project management. It doesn't exist in your inbox. It needs to be, thinking about a clear methodology of project management, a tool potentially that can be dedicated to managing the project and the communications and the status of where it's going, not living in your inbox on its own. And that kind of gets lost, because if you've got inboxes like many founders and leaders that we see, it's never going to get seen unless you keep sending it to the top, and those nagging emails come into play as well. And nobody wants to be a nag. I mean, if you do, then maybe cover your ears. And then the last one is like, how do you even know that you're making a profit? If you're not even sure that you're making a profit, how do you even know what you're doing? And like we'll touch a little bit later on how you know you're doing well and how you're performing. But many agencies operate, through their bank balance accounting, and they're not really looking at profitability, or they're not really getting down to that level of information. They're just looking at the top numbers on the top line to see what's happening. So it can really stop the decision-making processes. It can, hinder those quick turnarounds, and really making it a little bit cloudy and flying blind along the way, so that you can't see the woods for the trees with how well are we actually doing, how are we making a profit, how are we even going to last the next 6 months.
Thank you. So I'm just going to cover what we mean by resource management, and this you hopefully will know all of this, but one of the ways that I sort of helped teams actually to visualize this as well. And again, we'll come on to the importance of teams understanding how things work as well as the leaders in a bit. But essentially what happens is that you have some people and you have some projects, and you have to try and match those people to those projects. So this first person here might be working on project A, and then you might need somebody else to also be contributing to project A, but that person is also needed on project B. So what happens when project B starts, because you've got that person working on both? Well, it might be that this next person can contribute to project B, but is also working on something else. And then you might need a little bit of time from somebody else again. So as you can see here, you've kind of got an overlap. So what happens when we get to this point in time when all of these things are going on at once? How do you need to know that there isn't too much for one person to do at any given point in time? And it's not just about availability of time, but also thinking about skills and potentially even seniority levels as well. So what are you charging for in terms of people's time and knowledge and skills? It might be that you've got somebody that's got more experience or is more senior or more strategic that you might charge a higher rate for compared to somebody who's more junior. So it's being able to kind of put all of those jigsaw pieces together and having those people in the right places at the right time. So what does good look like then when it comes to resource management and capacity planning? So we have built these elements around our people, processes, tech and information framework, and we've described here what gold star standard is, or chef's kiss standard is, when it comes to what good looks like. You love a chef's kiss emoji, don't you, Vicky?
Love a chef's kiss emoji, can't go wrong.
So we'll start with making swift decisions. So really, and this applies for agencies and any organisation really, you want decisions to be decentralised. So again, coming back to that bottleneck point, good is really when you as the leader are no longer the single source of truth for every decision that needs making. But this is only really possible with a kind of clear strategic framework, guidelines that allow people to say yes or no based on information that's available to them rather than just having to ask you. And this really means that your internal blockers are cleared up within hours rather than days. It means that junior staff can feel more empowered to make decisions as well. So that's really about having the right information available and being able to kind of make the decisions that you need to based on the data that you have. Monitoring profitability. So this is, I suppose, monitoring profitability and that profitability being good. So what good looks like is knowing what your margin is as a business, obviously, but also on a project by project basis. And also having that information in real time rather than having to wait until the end of a month, or even worse, we have seen it waiting until the end of a quarter before you realise that you've actually spent too much money on something and there's zero ROI. This really means that you need transparency around the cost of the cost of your people, the cost of time, basically. So you need to know exactly how much each staff member's hour costs the agency, and then also the amount of time that's being put into work as well. So thinking about tech, so the way that we support clients to choose tech is always by starting with what the process is that you're trying to improve through technology. Otherwise you end up down rabbit holes where you've got a system that you're not really using properly and it actually doesn't do the thing that you really needed it to do in the first place. So having the right technology that kind of does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So that doesn't just mean tech being where you're storing your files, but it should also be like an automation engine that eliminates as much of the manual admin as possible. And good tech can really reduce what is often coined as work about the work. So you want to do the work, not have to spend loads of time sort of working on admin. And so that might look like having either completely integrated software that has everything in one place, or at least having whatever you use as your CRM tool sort of connected to your project management tool and connected to your invoicing software and so on and so forth. So that might mean things like sort of status of work for a client is automatically available from whatever your project management tool is, rather than having to rely on manual checks of everything and kind of written updates. Or it might be invoices that are generated automatically when a milestone is checked off within your project management software, for example. Moving over to the people element, so putting the right people on the right jobs. I've already said, this is about workload capacity management, but also about optimizing your talent. So making sure that you've got people who are sort of specialists, or are really good at something and really enjoy doing something, that are going to be able to do a job potentially in half the time with twice the impact, rather than somebody who could do something but might take a bit longer, and you're questioning whether or not the quality is there. And also is somebody the go-to for something, so they end up being completely piled on with work, whereas somebody else is sitting and twiddling their thumbs and you don't realise. So what you want to be moving to is past a kind of all hands on deck model to a sort of assembly line where people's strengths are really maximised. So you've got people working within their sort of zone of genius as much of the time as possible. Meeting client deadlines and needs. So this is when deadlines are met functionally and systematically, without working until 2 o'clock in the morning, or I've worked all weekend on this. We don't need heroics. We need consistent, stable, sort of proactive working to meet deadlines. And what that should look like is that you're consistently sort of ahead of the curve, ideally beating deadlines as well as meeting them. And the other kind of impact or knock-on effect of that, I suppose, is your client satisfaction. So if the client feels like you are meeting their needs within deadlines that are set, and probably to a higher quality because there's less of that kind of scrabbling, then any kind of, I don't know whether any of you measure kind of client net promoter scores or satisfaction scores or anything like that, but essentially their client satisfaction should be higher as well. Managing team capacity and workloads. So what you're wanting to do here is have a consistent achievement, basically, of utilisation targets across the business. So you'll probably have different roles and different levels of seniority will have different utilisation targets, but overall a sort of average utilisation target across the business. Less burnout, ideally, and really having a sort of visualization of who's doing what at any given point in time, but for the foreseeable future. So it helps not only with allocating people to jobs, but also whether or not you've even got capacity to take on a new project, or when a new project might need to start, and where you might need to get support from freelancers perhaps. An effective communication. So this is really like clarity. Everybody knows the who, the what and the when without having to kind of ask or dig through figuring out, which Teams channel is it that I'm meant to be looking at, or which Google chat am I supposed to be looking at, or where's the brief that I need to go and look at again. So having meetings with clear agendas and with action items, and sort of keeping that information clear for everybody. And I've jumped around a bit in a bit of a weird order, but efficient workflows is the other one. So good is having a repeatable process, ideally automated through that great tech that we've looked at, and really understanding or having a sort of, even going as far as a sort of signature process, which one of our clients is looking at the moment, which is what is your agency's unique way of getting from point A to point B that ensures quality every single time. You're onboarding a client, in minutes rather than days, and that the quality of the outputs are consistent regardless of who's kind of assigned to the task.
I was just going to say, on the communications, it's always funny, isn't it, when you've got so many different tools that are all pinging and zinging and singing that you don't know where or which one is making the noise that you should pay attention to. And if they all go off at the same time, there's nothing worse, is they're like, well, where am I meant to look?
Yeah, pinging, zinging, and singing is a great phrase.
Yeah, you can have that for free.
So a little bit more of me talking for a second. So based on that kind of what does good look like, we've put together what we think are some of the key ingredients for kind of success and for meeting that gold star standard. So those of you that are listening live, if you are feeling in an interactive mood, then perhaps put the number of which one of these feels like the biggest challenge for you in the chat. But I'm going to go through these in order for now. So shared purpose and mindset. So this is like, is everybody on the same page about what we're here to do? And that also includes like commercial mindset for your team. So do they all actually understand how the business makes money? Like, do they understand why it's important for them to be doing their timesheets, for example? Or do they understand the importance of accurate estimations in terms of how long they think something's going to take? Because that's what needs to go into the quote for the client, etc. So making sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of why we're here and what needs tracking. Clear pricing models, we think, is another key ingredient. So I've sort of mentioned this before in terms of different roles or levels of seniority, but you might have different rates for different sectors. For example, we had one client that had different rates for different global geographies because they knew that their services could attract a higher rate in a different part of the world, for example. But being really clear from the outset about what those rates are and what the profit margins are on those rates compared to the kind of cost base that you're working with as well. Clear job scope and estimates. So we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but like being really clear about what the client needs and what does that mean you're going to need to do to kind of meet those needs, and how long are those things going to take. Having the right tools for the job. So again, I've touched on software a little bit, but making sure you've got tools that actually help rather than hinder. Accurate data capture. So what is it that you actually need to know? You know, you get put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So starting with what is it that we need to know and how are we going to get there? And then aligned behaviours. So this can be one of the biggest challenges actually in agencies is when it comes to timesheets, like getting people to actually complete them, making sure that the information they're or the time categories, if you like, are accurate. We worked with one agency that had got the longest list of categories that people could choose from to book their time against, that in the end they just weren't using any of them and they were just picking the same thing off the list every time. So we worked with them to kind of consolidate that list down into what is it that you actually need to know here. And so there's something around like the culture of how to encourage people to do what you need them to do, basically, and that might include incentives or whatever.
So there's quite a lot of food talk so far. We've talked about ingredients and chef, and this is a lunchtime meeting. So if this is making you hungry,
hopefully
and you're
you're
watching this
already
over
eating.
lunch, then yeah, or if you're watching it back at tea time, it's gonna increase your appetite potentially. But obviously there's that list of 6 things. We could probably fill more than an hour to go through in great detail about, you know, the experiences that we've had with agencies, but also how to maybe potentially tackle those. So we've picked 2 that we're going to focus on, and we'll walk through first of all the scoping side and the estimates, and then we'll move a little bit around onto the data capture side of things, and we'll be able to share with you some tips and tricks that you can hopefully take away from this meeting today. And at the end, as we've kind of breadcrumbed already, there is a special offer if you've got one burning question that's on that list that you can come and chat to us about directly. So let's get into it. What do we want? We want everything. Let's talk. Let's really get into the actual subjects of scoping work, scoping those jobs, and why it's, what the things that are really key and important to ask. It's a real good approach to kind of think about yourself as a bit of a nosy person, or you could take the stance of being a bit of a toddler when you approach asking all these questions, to really drill down on nailing what is included in the scope of the work that you're trying to assess, and you're trying to estimate, and you're going to work out who's going to do it and all those key things to make it actually come to life. So when it comes to understanding it, it's really important to drill down onto to as many questions as possible. So defining it is the most accurate way that we go about it. It's done across all different industries. It's not revolutionary when it comes to agencies. We do it in all different shapes and sizes in our lives. But it's really important about really understanding what is the most important things that are not included, which might be a bit of a surprise, but really asking all those questions, but what do you not need as well, and making sure that you really hone in on, so this thing is in and this thing is out. You don't want to be getting halfway down the project and the deliverables and something kind of creeps in, because we've talked about scope and that scope creep kind of scenario that we'll all have experienced in our time, but really understanding what it is that is in there. So some ways that you can do that is really focusing on what they want and what they need. What you want is a really big shiny billboard that sits in Times Square, but what you actually need is a campaign that will breadcrumb over a series of weeks on different social platforms, and it will accumulate to a communication. That's the simple way. What they're two very different things. They come with two different skill sets. They come with two different costs acquired to them, and they do mean two totally different things. So there's lots, this is where your inner toddler will come in, and you will start asking lots of questions. One great way to do that is the 5 W's. So the who, what, where, when, why. Just keep asking any question, and why is a great one, because if you can just keep going, if you could ask why up to 5 times, very annoying for the person who's been asked why, but it will also really start to get to the root cause of what it is that you are trying to get your answer to kind of nail down a decision. Yes, it isn't the billboard in Times Square. Yes, it's a campaign that we want. Why do you want it? So you just keep asking those open questions, and really kind of exploring what it is and where they're trying to get to. It goes without saying that there is the devil's in the detail, and really understanding the very specifics in what's included in the job. So whether it's you need a freelancer, you need a supplier to be able to bring you particular materials that you don't have in house, or really nailing down what are the specifics that are included in the jobs, and that can help you understand the scoping, that can lead to the invoicing, and you can start really pulling together the line items in an invoice that you need to deliver the job at the end of the day. And I've already talked about it a little bit, but what is out of scope is so important, and it's such an easy thing to forget. But if you can kind of focus on what isn't included, and then you lead into what is included, you can almost approach a conversation in reverse at times if you're finding it difficult to really shape what it is you need. And a little top tip is when you're having your briefing calls with clients, is you can use the recording features in your tool, and maybe create a template. So you can say, what I'm looking for in this briefing are these key things, these are the headers, and then take the notes and pop them into a AI tool of your choice. We don't advocate for any particular one, and get it to do that briefing for you, so that you can kind of save yourself a little bit of time of trying to remember what is it that you said. Because when you've been there an hour and you've been going through those details and you've been asking all those questions, sometimes things might get forgotten or might get a little bit blurry, and it saves that email chain back and forth, or that WhatsApp backwards and forwards, when you're really trying to nail down what it is that they actually are wanting from you. I'm not going to do the voice, but nobody wants that. No, we're not doing it, but okay. You can do it in your mind.
Okay, so once you've got a high level plan, and this is just a bit of an example here of how you might break it down, but you can work with your team to break down what the scope is into kind of deliverables, and that might be sort of bigger deliverables or phases, and then further out down into smaller deliverables or work packages. You don't necessarily need to go super detailed when it comes to tasks. If that doesn't work for you, we've seen some agencies that do go to that level of detail, which can be more helpful, particularly for kind of more junior members of staff. But we've seen others where they kind of stick at the deliverables or phases level of detail. But the more detailed you go, the better it can be, honestly, in terms of like accuracy of estimating and things like that for future jobs. So it will help you to create quotes that are more accurate. And like I say, it can help for sort of day-to-day task management for people that prefer to work in that way or find it easier to work in that way. But it's kind of whatever's up to you, whatever works for you, really.
So I'm going to talk a little bit around the sizing and the estimating bit, which is something that comes up in pretty much every agency that we've been working with over the last 2-3 years. And it's how long is a piece of string is the killer question, because it really, people kind of either work on, days, hours, vibes, however they want to size the work that they think, how long they think it's going to take for them to complete it. So there's a few different ways that we can look at sizing. There's some more complicated ways. There's some very simple ones that you could probably take away. But how you go about it is really to understand the time it takes. So there are certain ways, like you can look at t-shirt sizing. So t-shirt sizing, you've got the small, medium, large, extra large. Don't overcomplicate it and add in your triple XLs and all those types of levels. Keep it very simple for how you actually think in time. Each one of those t-shirts has an amount of time associated with it. So a small might be a couple of hours, a medium might be half a day, and where did I get to? A large, a large might be a day, and an extra large might be a day and a half or 2 days, depending on how you want it, how you work out your own models internally with your working. But looking at simple ways that you can kind of accumulate and look at time, and the other important bit is to communicate what each one of those t-shirt sizes are and how long they take. So then once you've got an agreed methodology, shall we call it, you can then sit down as a project team and estimate those tasks, as Danielle mentioned in the previous slide. So really looking at how long, if everybody might have their own t-shirt size to talk about, and it comes together, you all sit around and go, well, I think it's a small, or actually I think it's a little bit harder than what you think. This is what I'm thinking about doing to be able to meet this brief. Actually, I think it's a medium. And then a conversation should be had around, actually, okay, we'll kind of we'll err on the side of caution. We'll price it as a medium-sized piece of work, and let's go with that. And if it comes in cheaper, then that's great. And if it comes in, if it goes in more, then we need to refine that, how long it takes. So you might decide to change the time that's attributed towards each one of those t-shirts. T-shirt sizing is not the only methodology out there, by the way. So I must kind of just say that's an easy way to do it, and that's one that we've worked with clients before. There's lots of other ways. So you can do numerical. So you can use like a 1 to 10 scale. I've seen it done with voting dots, so everybody gets a dot, and then the one you vote on a priority and think how many dots it's going to take, and then you basically follow the same kind of methodology of having a conversation, talking about it, collaborating with a team, talking to your peers, and learning lessons from other things that might have been done in along a similar vein as well. So learning from the experience of those in your team who might have done similar work. That also helps when it comes to looking at your estimating and how long it will take. There are lots of other ones, like when you talk about in more of a kind of a tech glance, they use things like planning, poker, Fibonacci sequences. But for the purposes of like just being really consistent, t-shirt sizing, a numerical, or even the dots is probably an easy one. But I find the t-shirt sizing seems to work very well for physical, like you can actually picture it in your mind and you can be able to understand it as a group. which t-shirt you have. You can even make your own t-shirts when you go into a room, and you know how much time is associated with not to wear, but like a pictorial version of a t-shirt. Or you could have a t-shirt, like you could all
Oh
just
my
wear a
God.
t-shirt, and it's up to you. Creatives are
Anyway.
creatives. Yeah. But the rules are there. I mean, as long as you've got a process and a methodology, have the conversation, decide on a unanimous decision on how long it takes for that piece of work, and then you've got an idea of how long is a piece of string, and then you can bill for the string.
Lovely. Okay, so capturing data. Rubbish in, rubbish out.
That's polite.
So yeah. So again, this is just like, what data is it that you actually want to capture? What is it that what information is it that you need, and why? So this might be like categories of time I mentioned. So is it just which client you're working on? Is it billable versus non-billable? Is it down to the level of detail of which deliverables or phases you're working on, as opposed to time that's spent on communication with the client? If it's internal time, do you need to know whether somebody's doing something working on marketing or business development versus kind of process or operational improvements, etc. When it comes to timesheets, you probably want weekly updates. Again, we've seen instances where agencies are not looking at that. So they're not collecting the data until the end of a month, but then it almost takes another month to kind of get that information into the format of the report that they need to kind of really analyse it. So by that time, you're potentially up to 2 months out of date from the time that's being logged, and not really much you can do about it at that point in time. So most common approach for timesheets is obviously getting people to fill them in. There are ways that you can automate, like task monitoring. There are tools that you can use. Some people are less keen on those because it's potentially seen as a bit more intrusive, but obviously depends on how you use the data. There are tools that, if you do go to kind of task management level in terms of project management software, there are plugin tools that you can use where you can go, right, I'm going to press play on this task and it'll start tracking the time and it'll automatically connect it. And you also want to think about, do we need it by day? Do we need it by half a day? Do we want sort of 30-minute or hour chunks? So just really understanding what level of detail you want to go to with that data.
Another way that you can kind of gather the list of things that you want to report on and how accurate you want to report on them is really putting the actual person who needs that report or that detail of data at in the driving seat of the need. So within kind of our technology backgrounds, and especially mine working in tech, is we use a kind of a user story format. So it's putting the role first, and then you ask for the thing that you want, and then you justify it with a kind of a business activity or reason behind it. And the reason why that works is because it obviously says who needs it, what is it that they need, what data is it that they need, and why do they need it. And that really helps with understanding the requirements of the report that you want. So if it's timesheets, it might be you'll look at the person who is going to be receiving that data, and then you'll also look at the person who's going to fill that in. Nobody wants an arduous process. But here are some examples of kind of reporting needs that we've used in the past, and they're just very, very easy to read. But as the director, what you need is to know who has capacity so that you can allocate new projects. That's very different to the person who's the account manager, who needs to know how much budgeted time they have left so that they can manage the expectations of the client, versus a person in the creative team, and they need to know how much budget time is left on a task that they're working on so they can plan their own workload. So the levels of data that's needed is very, very different, and who needs it is very clear about in the need, and using that user story format is a great way to do it.
And so in terms of what that actually looks like, this might be one of the ways that you would lay the information out. So this is project-based tracking that says this project, the budgeted amount of time is this much, this is how much time has been used already, and therefore what's left. And again, the kind of importance of time versus scope and deliverables tracking is, where might we have either gone over budget already in terms of time, but not only that, we haven't met the scope, or where have we used a certain amount of time and we've still got time left, but actually the scope is behind in terms of what we would expect given the amount of time that we've spent on it. And another view might be we need to know by individual who's got capacity or who's over capacity. So you don't want people, you know, silently sort of slaving away, working in their evenings and weekends when you've got other people that might be able to take some of that workload from them. Vicky's already mentioned this. We don't necessarily recommend specific solutions straight off the bat as a general rule, because the way that we work with our clients in terms of tech selection is that we use that user story approach that Vicky just talked through. We do that with tech. So lots of systems out there do very similar things, but some of them will do things that others don't, and some of them will do things in slightly different ways. So we would always start with their requirements and kind of see where we end up in terms of what system might be most suitable. But we do have quite a bit of experience and knowledge of a lot of the certainly the most popular tools that are out there at the moment. So this just kind of shows some of the ways that some of those systems help you to visualize some of that data that we just kind of went through. It's much nicer to look at a graph than a table of numbers, I reckon. But yeah, so there's lots of different ways that information can be presented in some of the tech solutions that are out there. So if you want the chef's kiss version of how to manage your resources, then these are the ingredients that we've talked through with you. I guess just in terms of how Optimo can help, some of the things that we do here are listed here. So team training, we can help you look at roles and responsibilities and kind of skills audits. We provide support around how to manage client expectations, so just on that scope piece. Tech requirements I've mentioned, and then kind of comms and behaviour change internally as well to support those behaviours.
So here's the freebie that we kept you waiting for all the way through. So thanks for sticking with us. But obviously the list of the ingredients was quite long. There was 6 kind of areas, and they're probably quite broad. And we've focused on this session today on 2 of them. But if, like I say, there's something in there that you actually are feeling and experiencing yourself in your organisation, this is a free QR code to book into my calendar, and we're more than happy to do you a free call, and we'll talk about that particular area that you've got that's burning a hole in your business at the moment. And we'd love to be able to help you out and just give you some more of our knowledge and expertise as we've done already today.
Yeah, anything that we couldn't quite squeeze into the hour.
Yeah, very much so.
So if anybody's got any questions, we have got 10 minutes or so before we promised we would finish this slot. So feel free to either come off mute or pop something in the chat. But equally, feel free to go if you need to. But we'll hang on for a few more minutes anyway, just in case. And yeah, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming along. I hope you found it useful.
I think everybody's either typing really, really hard or deciding whether to leave.
That's very good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Laura.
Good. Hope it was helpful for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. Nice to see you.
Ask if it's helpful. I was going to say, are there any particular kind of pinch points that you find with, you know, if as a business is kind of building and growing, and particularly, I don't know, taking on maybe more entry-level staff, are there any particular pinch points when it comes to kind of finding the right systems and processes as you're also going through all of that change? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Say it one more time.
So, okay, so obviously, if you're thinking about kind of how the team grows out and how a business in marketing can, for example, can go very quickly through big periods of growth,
Yeah.
So are there any particular pinch points that you notice when working with clients for things like systems and processes and dealing with that change?
Yeah. The pace of
There's a few
change
things.
the pace of change in agencies is really fast, and it's almost so in an ideal world what we would do is go, right, let's stop for a second, let's figure out where you're trying to get to, and then kind of build the foundations for that so that they're in place before you get there. In that So one of the things that I think our clients find most useful working with us is that we almost provide that, like like we become part of their team basically, to be the people that manage all of those changes. So one of our clients at the moment actually is about 20 people, I reckon, and they've got a sort of core team of people that we're working with, and then but then everybody else has ideas and things as well. So what's helpful for them in terms of working with us is for us to be the people that they go and tell Danielle and Vicky what it is you need, so that we're like the single source of truth in terms of what it is that is needed. And then I think just the other thing from a change point of view is being able to constantly tell people like where we're at in terms of the process. So they've done it with their AI policy, for example. So they sent a questionnaire out, asked loads of people how they were using AI and how they might want to see it used in the team going forwards. And then they've created an AI policy, but now that policy, they're not quite sure if it's right and it needs reviewing and this, that and the other. So they're worried that people might think like, well, what are you doing about it, sort of thing. So just being able to say, this is what we're doing with it, this is the process that we're following, and this, like, we have listened to what you've said, and this is kind of where we're going with it, sort of thing. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, makes
Well,
sense.
I was going to add into that is for newer team members, the onboarding journey is really key to that as well. So when you bring in a new person into your team, you obviously have already assessed their level. So there might be a junior designer, might be a junior client services person, whatever it is. So you already know where they're at, and you can then put together in their onboarding package and their journey the right level of documentation or support or videos or whatever it is that matches their learning needs to help them bring them up to speed with what's going on at the moment. So whilst Danielle's got all these things, talked about all this change that's happening, you obviously still want to bring them on the journey of embedding them in the team or in their role. So by having a really well-defined onboarding journey as an employee or as whatever that role looks like is also really important. So finding the right platform that can match their learning style, their role, whatever it is. So like processes can be a bit dry to look at. So if you can bring them to life in a creative way, that's even better because they're engaging. And then there's the things like, you know, doing some job shadowing if they're able to be physically in the office, coming along to meetings, doing some kind of one-to-one time coaching, mentoring. All of those things also help them, because there's like two journeys they're almost on, is learning to be in a job and learning that this whole place is now in a whole new cycle of change and growth.
Makes sense.
Good question.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording. So thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to those of you that are watching the recording later. And yeah, get in touch if you want to chat.